The doorbell rang, sharp, unexpected, and far too early for comfort. When I opened it, four men in dark suits stood in the morning light, holding a single brown envelope. "Are you Mia?" one of them asked softly, and in that instant, I felt my heart drop. I didn't know what was inside that envelope, but I knew nothing would be the same after that moment. "My name is Mia. I'm from Brighton, United Kingdom, a quiet seaside town where mornings begin with the smell of rain on old stone, and the sea hums just beyond the rooftops. Life wasn't glamorous. I worked at a small diner tucked beside the pier, chipped mugs, flickering lights, the kind of place that smells like coffee and hope. I was 26, exhausted, and holding the world together with coffee refills and borrowed smiles. My mother was sick, bills kept arriving faster than I could pay them, and every day felt like a quiet race I was losing. But no matter how heavy life got, I always tried to greet people with kindness, because sometimes that's all we have left to give. Every morning, at exactly 8:10, an elderly man named Mr. Harris walked in, gray overcoat, braun hat, a quiet, tired look in his eyes that spoke of years gone by. He always sat by the same window, seat number 3, and ordered the same meal, black coffee, scrambled eggs, and 2 slices of toast. He never spoke much, but there was something gentle about him, something lonely. The other waitresses barely noticed him, but I did, maybe because I knew what it felt like to be invisible. Sometimes I'd linger by his table, ask about his morning, or slip him a small slice of pie when the manager wasn't looking. He'd smile faintly and whisper, "You'll get me in trouble one day, young lady." I'd laugh and say, "Worth it." It started as a small act of kindness, but soon it became a ritual, our quiet little friendship, 2 souls just trying to make it through another day. Over time, I learned his story. He had once been a schoolteacher, loved by his students, but after losing his wife years ago, life became quieter, emptier. His children had moved far away. He lived alone in a small brick house by the edge of town, where the sound of the waves was his only company. Maybe that's why he came to the diner every morning, not for the food, but for a little warmth that felt like home. And maybe that's why I cared, because I was missing that too. Then one winter morning, he didn't come. His booth by the window sat empty. At first, I thought maybe he'd overslept, but the next day and the next, his chair stayed untouched. The napkin he always folded just once lay perfectly still, as if waiting for him to return. By the 3rd day, something inside me told me to call the hospital, and when they said his name, I knew. He'd been admitted after a fall. I remember walking into the hospital that evening, my apron still on, my heart racing. He looked smaller, fragile, but when he saw me, he smiled. "You came," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Of course," I said. "Who else is going to bring you muffins?" He laughed softly, a sound that filled that sterile room with something almost like sunlight. No one else had visited him, so I did, every day, even when I was tired, even when I barely had time. Sometimes I read him the newspaper, sometimes we just sat in silence. He'd look out the window and say, "The world's still beautiful, isn't it?" And I'd nod, even though sometimes I wasn't so sure. A few weeks later, he returned to the diner. His hands shook slightly as he lifted his cup, but his eyes were bright again. Before leaving, he looked at me and said, "You remind me of my daughter." I smiled, not realizing those would be the last words he ever said to me. Months passed. The diner stayed busy, my mom's health grew worse, and life carried on, until that morning when the men in suits walked through the door. The diner fell silent as they asked, "Are you Mia?" I nodded, and one of them handed me the brown envelope. "We represent Mr. Harris," he said. "He passed away last week. He asked us to deliver this personally." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a handwritten letter and a folded document. The letter read, "Thank you, Mia, for your kindness, your smile, and for reminding me that good hearts still exist." Tears blurred the words as I unfolded the paper beneath it, the deed to his house, and enough money to pay all of my mother's medical bills. The lawyer spoke softly. He had no family who wished to claim his estate. He said you were the only one who treated him like family. That night, I took the bus to his house. It was small but warm, filled with books, photographs, and quiet memories. On his desk, beside an old reading lamp, was a framed picture of us, taken one morning at the diner. We were both laughing. He'd kept it beside his favorite chair. As the sun set through the curtains, I stood there, realizing that the world had given me something money couldn't buy, proof that kindness matters. Kindness doesn't need an audience. It doesn't always bring applause. Sometimes, it's just a cup of coffee, a smile, or a visit to someone who's forgotten what warmth feels like. But kindness always finds its way back, maybe not how you expect, but exactly when you need it most. Moral of the story, even the smallest act of kindness can change a life, and sometimes, it becomes the reason someone believes in goodness again. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who still believes in kindness, and subscribe to Moralist, where real stories remind us that doing good never goes out of of style, because here on Moralist, every story grows a little light in the dark.